Hello, and thank you all for joining us on a Friday after what has been, I'm sure, 3 very busy days of appointments and seeing new products. Thank you also to the streaming audience for joining us. I'm sure you've been discovering lots of novelties online, and perhaps some of them through our WWD Instagram stories with our style director, Alex Badia, who's been picking out the best of the fair for you. So what we're going to try and do today is crystallize for you, with the help of some of the leading executives of 4 top brands at the fair, some of the society trends, some of the current events, and some of the sort of consumer shifts that are really shaping the watch landscape. And I think it's fair to say that even though it's been 2 years that we've not had an in-person watch fair, the acceleration of trends during that period makes it feel more like 5 or 6 years, and not only in terms of the acceleration of digital, but all other consumer trends as well. So to talk about all these things, I'd like to call up on stage to join me today Patrick Prugnot, Chief Executive Officer of Ulysse Nardin, Wilhelm Schmidt, Chief Executive Officer of A. Lange & Söhne, George Sis, Chief Marketing Officer for Tag Heuer, and Louis de Meckenheim, Chief Marketing and Communication Officer and a member of the Executive Committee at Chopard. Please join me, gentlemen. So it's great to have such a wonderful panel of brands represented here today. And it comes at a time that we couldn't really have predicted, but last weekend was a bit of an extraordinary event in terms of people outside the watch industry becoming aware of what is going on in this sector. And that is the launch of the Moon Swatch, where we saw huge crowds going to shopping centers and main arteries like the Champs-Élysées worldwide, hoping to snag one of these not even limited edition watches. So just looking at that phenomenon, it made me think of sneaker drops, what we're usually used to seeing in the streetwear scene. And I was just wondering, coming on the heels of a record year for Swiss watch exports, are we on the cusp of a new boom for the watch market? And I was wondering maybe if, George, you could let us know your thoughts about that, because I know that, that this kind of collaboration is something you've had experience of.
Well, thank you very much, Joel, and thank you for the invitation and for being here with all of you guys. To answer your question, I think the industry is kind of on the cusp of a little bit of renaissance. You know, I think we are in a really good place in terms of the demand. We see a huge interest on the consumer side. I think the competition has really pushed all the brands to perform better, to be creative, to be innovative. The quality of products that we're seeing here at the fair is amazing. It's really, really impressive. And, you know, I think the creativity is coming through. And I can talk about a little bit what we did last year with our friends from Nintendo. You know, we did a collaboration with Super Mario on our connected watch. And when we launched it, it was a real surprise to everyone. They were wondering, you know, wow, what is going on? And it was incredible. We sold 2,000 watches in 13 minutes. You know, it was really cool. But I think what it shows that creativity can be amazing, can be the good surprise, can be very impressive, but it needs to have something that pays it off at the end. You know, it's not just surprise for the sake of surprise. You actually have to have the end game where you look at your impact on your core collection. And I think that's going to be very interesting to see what will happen after the last weekend, what will be the impact on all of that. And I think great collaborations do achieve that, and that's the goal, I think.
And for those who might not be aware of this, but Patrick actually used to work at Apple, and so I'm sure that you've seen your share of iPhone launches. How does this compare? Is this a sign of some kind of energy bubbling up in the market, or is it a one-shot, do you think?
You mean the Apple Watch or?
The Moonswatch launch, you know, if you're comparing it with tech, which is a background that you know about.
I've absolutely no clue, but I found it brings interest. Whether it's a win-win for both brands, I wouldn't be able to tell, and I guess time will tell. But I guess sometimes the collaboration helps to spark some interest, foster interest on the industry, and I guess it's, you know, I've got a strong feeling the industry can still grow a lot. I'm convinced in the watch industry we're probably now in a period of a systemic change, and where there is a lot of new collectors. There is a market which is growing. It's been the case for a long time. There's a lot of excitement. And the great thing, and it's maybe post-pandemic, the level of education of the consumer have been growing as well, have been raising, and we see that. We see new customer coming in. They know what they're talking about. And even if they don't, they want to discover. And I guess it's a very good news for all of us.
Mm-hmm. And Wilhelm, how has this influx of new consumers been felt at Alanga? Because you're obviously a house that represents a very long history, and so you're juggling basically between this tradition and then addressing these new younger people who are maybe newer to the industry.
First of all, I'm very glad that you didn't ask me about the Swiss watch exports, because that's not really my job. I also, you know, would be the complete wrong person to answer anything if it's electronically linked. But the third thing, which is always surprising to me, do you honestly think young people don't like quality? They don't like stuff that will survive their life, that doesn't have a short product life cycle? They don't embrace on craftsmanship and history. You know, I actually see quite often the opposite. You know, we have a great followership in the Silicon Valley. People that made their money with products that outlived their usefulness within 6 months. So they're used to come up with something new every 6 months. And here they come and spend their money on the most traditional thing that you can buy, which is a mechanical watch, an anachronism in itself. So I don't think, as long as we manage to connect with them, as long as we manage to stay relevant for them, I foresee a great future for us.
I fully agree with that. I think the relevance is the right word. I think it's amazing to see some new customer coming to us, I guess, collectively, and knowing already a lot, and they're only 25 or 30, and they have an appetite to invest or to buy watches, which is very new to us. And I guess that it's not only about inherited money, it's also money that was made recently, but they learn so fast. And it's great. I think it's very good for the whole industry.
And I think unique to the brands here on stage, Chopard doesn't just have a watch business, but it also has a very thriving jewelry business. And that demand is being seen on both sides of the business. Who are these new people who are coming to Chopard, and how do you see them driving the business in the future, Louis?
What is fantastic is that they are all very young. And what is extremely interesting is that despite the fact that they are young, they are starting collecting, whether it is watches or jewels as well. So it's very new for us to see young collectors and young collectors interested in jewelry. So more than ever, there is a great bridge, a great link between the jewelry world and the watchmaking world, although those are two totally different industries. So we are very pleased to welcome them, and more than ever, we need to catch their appetite, tell our stories, and make sure that they hear about us. And to come back to your first question, what is absolutely extraordinary with what Swatch and Omega did is the fact that we are all talking about it. So it's a fantastic communication coup. They did it great, and it highlights not just those two brands, but as well the whole industry. So we all get benefit from that, and globally it's extremely positive.
And I know historically watch brands have often done collaborations, but they tend to be with companies that are outside of the watch industry. So obviously this collaboration was two brands within the same group. But could you see yourself doing a Chopard collaboration with Tag Heuer one day? I mean, would it be possible that two watch brands of a very high level collaborate like Fendi recently did with Versace?
I think everything is possible as long as there is a real meaning behind. And what we see is that there are many artists collaborating with technical expertise. Because when there is the artistical aspect on one side and the technical expertise on the other side, the collaboration between the two has a real meaning. So it is possible to imagine a collaboration with a brand, even if it's another watch brand, as long as there is a real connection between the two, a real meaning, and a real story to tell that has a sense for the final client.
Yeah, it can't just be slapping two names together to try and somehow exponentially increase
to communication.
And obviously, we've seen also tremendous rise in demand on the auction market. I think everybody was very much struck by the sale of the Patek Philippe Nautilus in partnership with Tiffany last year, which sold for $5.3 million, which seems like such an incredible figure, yet there it is. I'm just interested to know how you think that second-hand or auction market contributes to the halo of your brands. And perhaps, Wilhelm, you could talk a little bit about that, because I've heard that the desirability of Lange has been fueled by that market of resale and people buying vintage watches.
And I see it with a smile and with tears in my eyes, because on the one hand, it's a confirmation of the job you were doing over a long time. Don't believe that's just accidentally. That's usually the result of many years of hard work. On the other hand, it attracts people to you that they are in as long as they see you as an investment, and they leave you because they're not passionate about what they do if another investment group offers you a better return. Well, if I share with you that to get a new watchmaker for us, we have our own school, it takes about 5 years. So I can't build a business model on demand that comes and goes because there's investment or no. What we need is people that have a passion. In our case, a passion for mechanical watches, because I know once they're infected, sorry, it's a bad word in today's context, but that's what it really is. Once they're addicted, they will come and keep buying. And then I will, well, with pride can say to an 18-year-old, come to our school, 3-year education, another 2 years training, and you have a job for your life. And that's why I see my job, not to please somebody that buys a watch today and then flips it for whatever the next day after.
Yes, so who are these people who are, buying pieces at auction? I mean, Patrick, when you analyze that, are they doing it for the investment value? Are they doing it because they're building collections? Because I think Ulysse Nardin has got some pretty cult models as well that people seek out on that market.
Yeah, well, what's happening is, you're right. I mean, it's whether, I guess the market is a market, so people want to buy at auction and they want to pay high price for a timepiece. That's great, but obviously I'm a firm believer what's right, I guess, for our industry. It's people that love watches. I think only seeing a timepiece as an investment, I think it's for me, I don't think it's good enough. I think I think we're better off creating a strong desire and exciting pieces. The good news is what's happening is how you come with new timepieces that are very much often anchored into a history. Then it creates also desire, traction for pieces that were launched some time ago. And we can see that to this now, for instance. I mean, the Freak has been around now for 21 years. And we know that when we continue the story, and we're launching a new Freak here in Geneva, but when we continue the story, we can see it creating a lot of appetite from collectors on the first versions of the Freak. And I guess it's helping the brand. It's helping also to the whole industry. But it's really finding that balance between investment and I think watches are made to be worn from time to time. Sometimes it's good to keep them in a safe, but they're made to be worn.
Mm-hmm. And at Tag Heuer, obviously, you have a lot of models that stretch back decades, so you have that history to build on as well. What kind of action have you been seeing on the auction and resale market for those watches?
We've seen a very good action on this recently. Obviously, last year when we sold the the original Monaco from Steve McQueen went for 2.2 million. It was an incredible story for us. We were really excited about it, and we think there is a benefit in these kind of stories. It gets people excited. It creates a hook for people to follow the brand stories. It gives you the storytelling, which is the fundamental to all of marketing, right? And it gives you authentic stories that people tell. It's not necessarily stories that we are saying ourselves. It's other people say it on our behalf. It gives you that kind of the third party endorsement in a very organic way. So I think it's very important for the brands to work with the auction business, to actively support it. And you know, a lot of factors go into the success of it. Obviously, the scarcity is a huge part that affects it. So it's important to have a long-term strategy on that rather than just trying to be opportunistic one piece at a time. But we've really seen an increase in prices recently, quite significant, and we're very happy about that.
And so behind the headline figures of how many watches are being sold, or in terms of value, how much the market is increasing, it's sometimes easy to forget that this is a market, at least, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the Swiss watch market. Lange is a German company, I just like to point out for everybody. But for the Swiss watch market, it's easy to forget that 4 companies basically account for a little more than 40% of market share, which means that competition for the rest of the market share is obviously extremely tough. You're also dealing with a completely new profile of luxury consumer, not only millennial, but Gen Z. And Louis, I wanted to ask you a little bit, how do you talk to that consumer that is very often looking for purpose-driven brands, sustainability, diversity, values that maybe 10 years ago we didn't have to worry about as an industry, but that today are increasingly important to the consumer when they're picking their purchase?
The great thing is that our clients are becoming experts. They know the brand better than us. They know our collections and our creations sometimes better than us. And they consider their purchase as a global purchase. It's not just about the product, but it's as well about the story behind the product, the story behind the brand. And the brand needs to provide great values. So, of course, sustainability is becoming a subject more and more important. We have started at Chopard in 2018 to provide 100% ethical gold, whether it is on our jewelry creation or watch creation. And in the beginning, we did not feel that much reaction with our final clients. It was more a press, a very positive reaction, and our partners of the industry, the wholesale accounts, were following us. And now, for the very first time, we do have clients coming in our boutiques with the number one argument being, well, we are coming to discover the Chopard Maison and the Chopard creations because you have done this journey, this path to sustainability. And it's true that it's a global movement of the whole industry. We are very happy and proud to be one of the pioneers on this subject. And we have the feeling that everyone, our clients and the press, are not totally involved on the subject. So it is really interesting, and it gives a lot of joy to the whole company.
And Patrick, I think, you know, what's interesting about Ulysse Nardin is that you and other members of senior management recently bought back the brand from Kering. And in addition to, you know, these 4 big companies dominating the market, demand has been so strong that we have seen independents also enjoying lots of interest from consumers. What do you think is the added value of being an independent company in this environment?
We were very fortunate to be a part of a group like the Kering Group for a long time, which is a group that has a long-term vision. But actually, here there are 2 brands that are independent and 2 brands that belong to group. The group they belong to have also a long-term vision. I think what really matters is we know we are an industry where there is clearly we have to fight like there is. Our life depends on it every day, but on the other hand, we know we're building something for the long run. And success comes from that vision. And sometimes being an independent brand helps to do that, or help to have a consistency over time in what we do. But actually, there are very good examples here of brands that have had the same strategy for a long time, and that are enforcing it. And it's actually it's paying off. And we're doing this now. We do this now on GR Perego for both brands. But it's only the continuity of the work that started as being part of a group. But it's true. I can see also from a stakeholder point of view, and stakeholder meaning retailers, supplier, and then consumer as well. There's an appetite to see that brands are independent. And sometimes, I mean, the level of education, we were talking about it earlier, is really high among our consumer, and they know who is behind the brands, and they feel reassured as well.
How do you communicate your values to the consumer?
I think it's a good question. I think the values are obviously the brand values, but are more than ever, and this is regardless you belong to a group or whether you're independent, I think what the end consumer, the watch lover want to see, they want to see that the inner values of the brand that being told are the same as the people that are actually part of this. The fact now we organize a management buyout, and there is a couple of senior managers involved, makes those values probably more embodied. And you're right. I mean, we probably have the same spirit as the brand we represent.
Mm-hmm. And Wilhelm, when you're a brand like Lange that only produces a few thousand watches per year, you're sustainable by definition. Can you tell us what is your production and how do you allocate it? And what is the importance of communicating that to the consumer, that rarity and the craftsmanship that goes into it?
I could, but then I would be alone on stage for quite a while because there's no chance to answer that question easily. We produce about 5,500 watches a year, and we need about 500 people, and that's not accounting or marketing. That's the people that with their hands, and they're gladly a lot more skilled than my hands, they bring these watches together. And I think I referred to it in the beginning. It takes a long time to gain that skill. That's not a skill you can hire or buy, because you really have to produce that over time. At the moment, we all enjoy a time where there's a lot higher demand than what we can all produce. But I'm along around, and I know there are good days and there are bad days. And you don't build a strategy in the good days, you better build it in the bad days. We stay vigilant. We know that we have to be careful with everything we do. That's why we focus so much on collectors. And I know there's a big debate about specific watches that we build, and they are rare. They're rare because, as I said, 500 people, 5,500 watches. There is no way I can produce next year 6,500 watches because I don't have the people for it. So we focus very much on those people that were loyal to us in the last 25 years. We welcome everybody new. I'm not naive, because we also need to build the customer of tomorrow today. But we do it with care. And talking about value system, I believe if you have a great value system established in your company, it helps you to stay customer friendly in days where you don't need to be. And that's the big danger right now, I think, as an industry, because we enjoy so much demand. The likelihood that, again, we go into the old trap of complacency and arrogance is very high. Maybe the Germans are not known for it, so we have a fair chance to avoid it.
And it's interesting, I think, the different strategies that the brands are using in order to address the consumer. And we can't have failed to notice that in the last year, Tag Heuer has signed some really high-profile brand ambassadors. Ryan Gosling, who is not exactly well known for his endorsements, you managed to snag him. You have Naomi Osaka, who obviously speaks to a generation of young women who are very much inspired by her example. What is the importance and how competitive is that market for brand ambassadors, George?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think the ambassadors are hugely important in our business because watch is one of the most personal things you can have. And I think you need someone to front it. You need someone to make it more personal, help people help them understand how it feels. And I think the ambassadors can do that really well. But I think the ambassadors can be quite tied to the values that we have been talking about, because they can help to bring them to life. if you find the right one, if you find the authentic person, someone that is truly believes in the brand. And that was kind of the interesting thing about Ryan, because you're right, Joel, he never ever done one single endorsement in his life, not with any other brand, not watchmaking, not any industry whatsoever. And it was the very first one. And many brands have approached him, and we've talked to him. And one of the things that he told us, what really struck him the most about Tag Heuer, was he read this quote about John Glenn, and why he chose the Tag Heuer watch to go to space. And he said because he believed it was the one that won't let him down, you know. And it was just really interesting to find someone who has that insight. And we always look for the ambassadors that believe in the brand. They are so excited and interested in it. You know, in like guy like Patrick Dempsey, he wants to come to our factory in La Chaux-de-Fonds and spend time with the watchmakers. He's interested. He comes up with ideas. And you know, Naomi Osaka, we produced a limited edition of Aquaressa with her. She designed it, the color, the scheme, the whole thing. She really sent us the designs. This is what I have in mind. You know, it's really nice to work with people like that. But they also help us on this value side. You know, so I think it's very important. And the competition is very fierce. I mean, there are some amazing ambassadors we have here. You know, Patrick has some amazing guys that really represent the values of the brand. You guys have some amazing guys that really talk to the movie business and all that stuff, and really associate your brand with what you guys stand for. And I think all the brands are doing that. So it is fierce, but it's also there are opportunities out there, and you have to be very sorry. And
almost all the brands.
Yeah. We know. But you know, it's very important to do the homework and be honest with yourself and do it for the right reasons. You know, I think that's the key.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point. I mean, Chopard has an association with the red carpet that goes back literally decades at the Cannes Film Festival. I mean, the Palme d'Or is made by Chopard. You can't get more connected to a film festival than that. What is the halo effect of that for you? And has it changed with this new generation of consumers? Are they still as sensitive to that?
Well, everyone is fascinated by the world of cinema. I mean, it has been the case in the past. It is, of course, still the case today. We are celebrating this year the 25 years anniversary of the partnership between Chopard and the Cannes Film Festival. And this partnership is faithful because it has a meaning behind. We are fascinated by artists in general. We are fascinated by the ones who have the capacity to transmit an emotion. We believe that our creations do have as well the capacity to transmit an emotion, and that the association between the artist and the creation creates something extraordinary. And I believe that at the end of the day, we are all here to create beautiful objects that celebrate the most beautiful moments of the life of our clients. And we aim to generate this sparkle in the eye when one opens a box from Chopard and receives a beautiful jewel or a beautiful timepiece. And this is this very little momentum that we are all working for. So, of course, it has a meaning as much today as it had in the past.
And no offense to the rest of you, but I do think Ulysse Nardin gets the prize for the most original brand ambassador, a great white shark.
Exactly, and not the most expensive.
The question is, have you swum with them?
I'm sorry?
Have you swum with them?
Yes, I did. But actually, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and we know ambassadors, and the front of the brand is obviously part of our brand tend to express themselves. But it's true. I mean, for us, the shark is interesting because it's been part of the brand history for a long time. What's interesting, and it's almost over time, we didn't work on that. But it's true that it has almost two meanings in a shark. One is quite, how would I say, like an assessment of her self-confidence, etc. That's probably a symbol of that. But at the same time, also an endangered species. So it's pretty interesting, and I like the fact that we actually with the same animal and the same ambassador, we're telling two stories.
And so, I mean, obviously, one of the big themes overshadowing the show right now is all the continued uncertainty in the world. But focusing on the positive, in the last 2 years, we've seen the US market emerging as a really, really important motor for growth for a lot of the brands. So as we have continued uncertainty in Europe due to the war in Ukraine, as Shanghai goes back into lockdown, you know, I just wanted to ask all of you how the US has been performing for you and how you've been investing in developing that market. And, you know, perhaps we can start with Mr. Schmidt, if you want to tell us a little bit about whether Lange has been developing that market.
America was always very important for us and has been a success story in the last, well, I'm now helmeting the brand almost 12 years, and at least for that period of time, that's always been a strong foothold of our market. As I said before, it's a very interesting market. You know, as Europeans, we tend to look at Europe, and we have that structure in mind that if you pay a lot of money for a watch, and we are unfortunately a little expensive, and you're usually a bit older. In the US, that's not the case. In the US, we see people that are 21, 22, 25, and very knowledgeable, and you can't make a marketing story, specifically not when the story becomes a tale, because they will spot that, and then you lose all credibility, and you lose it forever. It's a collector market, and we are a collector brand, so by nature, there's a natural fit. With our restricted production, we cannot be available everywhere, but where we are available, we obviously attract enough people to make that a big success for us.
And I mean, Patrick, you've worked in the United States, so you probably have quite deep knowledge of that market. There was this kind of notion going around, a bit of a caricature of the US consumer at a certain point, where people were saying US consumers don't really understand what a mechanical watch is. What Wilhelm just said directly contradicts that. What's been your experience of it?
Well, I guess the American customer are very dynamic in their taste, meaning they can learn very rapidly, they can shift probably more rapidly than Europeans, and they don't need to be convinced 10 times before making a purchase. They are self-educated, but they also want to discover, and when they're in, I mean, the same, it's to some extent what Willem also said, I mean, they want to discover, and when they're in, I mean, they make the jump, they make the leap into a new brand or something new more rapidly than the European customer. And to be honest, actually, the European customer are probably almost isolated because the rest of the world is becoming more dynamic than Europe, where we are used to collectors that are great, but it takes a little bit more time here to do things. Now, I think one thing we have to take into consideration also in the US over the last decade, probably, is a major shift in the distribution. It is true for a while the distribution in the US was okay, but probably not up to the level we were expecting as brands. And right now, there is a clear step up. And the experience you can get in stores on both coasts, but also now inland in the US and in states that are raising in terms of luxury spendings is very interesting. I mean, what's happening is so different compared to what it was in the past. And I must say, that increase in our customer experience when buying a watch is probably helping a lot the market, the watch market. And sometimes I think about the US about the same way, probably, we'd have to ask some experts, but probably in the 80s and 90s, there's been an important change in the way the American would buy luxury cars, and they moved from local brands to international brands, and very often German brands. And it was quite fast. And I have the impression now in a different way with the American have been buying luxury watches for a while, but now they're going to a complete new scale. And this is great, and great for anyone, because we know still the Western world and the American are also influencing all the parts of the world.
And what aspects specifically of the retail experience do you think have improved? What was it that needed to be worked on?
Massive investment, great location, training, investment in staff, in training, all of this. And to some extent, I mean, obviously, there are great independent retailers in the US that have been doing that for a while. And there are also two chains or European now playing a role. Bucher, obviously, moving in with Tourneau, or Watches of Switzerland investing. And because the business in America is again very dynamic, I think they've been followed by also some local players. And I think it's probably one of the best news for the industry.
And Louis, Chopard has celebrated this year the 25th anniversary of the LUC manufacture. What has been the evolution in terms of the American consumers' understanding of the expertise that you're bringing to those watches?
Well, it has been quite impressive. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. Quite impressive because Americans, they can get immediately into a brand if they understand the DNA of the brand and if they understand the legitimacy of the brand. So they were one of the very first clients of Luc. And to come back on your previous question on investments, we are actually very proud to see that the American clients who were the very first purchasing Luc watches started collecting them. And now this passion happened to be a great investment. And so we have 25 years later the feeling that we are somehow giving back to those clients who've been faithful to us since the beginning. And to celebrate that, we are going to open our flagship boutique on the Fifth Avenue mid-September. And it will be a moment where we will finally have the great opportunity to give an extraordinary new experience to those clients. So the partnership, the very special relation that we have with American clients, we aim to keep on building it on the long term.
Is it much bigger than your previous flagship in New York?
It's not as big, but I believe that the experience will be extraordinary.
With the location.
I cannot reveal everything now.
Okay, and I mean, George, Tag Heuer has got, speed built into its watches. Obviously, there's tons of technicality in those products. What has been your experience with the US consumer, and how are you investing in that market?
It's very interesting because, it's not a secret, but Jack Heuer actually spent a huge amount of time in the US, and he was very influenced by America, and he loved the ignitability of America, which you see, because if you do it right, you can see amazing things. And Formula One is a perfect example. For the last 20 years, there was no one in the US who even knew who Michael Schumacher was. People just didn't follow it. And look, Drive to Liberty Media, Drive to Survive, boom. The race in Miami is going to be the race of the season. They announced Las Vegas yesterday. It's on fire. The things about the US, it's a massive country, and I think to succeed that, it's very important to really focus on a true omni-channel strategy. It's very difficult to do it direct to consumer. It's difficult to do it only by through wholesales or franchise. But it requires everything. And if we work together, if you have a strategy that includes wholesale, it includes franchise boutique, it includes FSS, it includes super strong e-commerce, which we saw grow massively during the pandemic. We actually saw over 800% growth over there. So I think that's what it takes, because it's so big, the US. You can't afford to have a boutique in every major city, So it is something that I think is the key to success, being truly omni-channel and delivering to those consumers. And I think you're absolutely right on the values. We feel the same thing about the consumers. They see through the fakeness. You have to be authentic, you have to be real, and you have to capture their imagination. So if you do, once you capture them, it's there.
Do you think that you understood what that retail mix needed to be, or has the pandemic accelerated your understanding of what you needed to do to service that consumer?
I think, obviously, during the pandemic, we have been forced to do a lot more of distance sales. We had to invent new things, and the e-commerce grew extra fast, obviously. And now I think we're going to settle to a different rhythm post-pandemic, because people still love to go shopping. I lived in New York for 2 years, and prior to pandemic, people love to go on the weekends, to hang out, to go through the stores, have a nice meal, and all that kind of stuff. This stuff is still there, and in our industry, it's very important. People love to go try a watch. Particularly when you're buying like your first watch. I mean, people spend year walking around different things, learning about the brands. It's part of the fun, and And I think it will still be extremely important. And I fully agree with Luis. I think you want to have an amazing flagships where you really inspire in the right places, where you really take people on the journey and make them dream.
So you're saying this is true of all markets, not just the US market, because I think that you guys unveiled your revamped website just before the pandemic hit, but you're saying you're not giving up on the idea of opening key flagships in important locations at the same time.
Oh, 100%. We just did it 2 weeks ago. We were in Dubai Mall. We opened one of our flagships, and I think these kind of things are super, super important. Yes, we've seen in other markets. The thing is about US, everything gets a little bit faster, quicker. You can really move super fast in the US. So I think that's a one bit of a difference there.
So Patrick, a few years ago, everybody was talking about the importance of having your directly owned stores, and everybody was investing a lot in their own flagships. Now you at Ulysse Nardin have bet on the opposite model, which is mainly a wholesale model. Can you explain a little bit the reasoning behind that?
Well, it's very simple. I mean, we do have a couple of directly operated boutiques, and we have a couple of franchise boutiques, but I think, I mean, there are now significant opportunities also with multi-brand. As I say before, when I talk about the US, the same is happening in the rest of the world, and we see, I think we see that the watch retailers are making huge progress. They're being inspired also by other industries, by the fashion industry, by some of the best retailers in the world, and they upgrade significantly. And I think there are, for brand at least like Ulysse Nardin, some great things to be done with, in a sense of true partnership. The same way retail, directly operated retail, could be interesting. But I think, and also knowing, the largest company in the watch industry is actually 100% multi-brand, or have actually their own stores franchised. And somehow it's influencing the consumer. And today the consumer can get also a great experience in a multi-brand store.
And Wilhelm, what is the retail mix at Lange between directly operated stores, wholesale, and e-commerce?
Sorry, it's something I can't unveil. Terribly sorry. We started as a pure wholesale company, and our history is pretty recent. We only started really selling watches in 1994. I personally believe that the winner of the future is the company that understands their customer the best, and where the customer also understands the brand the best. And I do struggle with the concept of having a middleman in between, unless that middleman, and if I say man, that can also be e-commerce, that can be a block, that can be, all these hybrids that we see, and probably more hybrids to come. But the battle will be who is delivering added value to the customer. And the channel or the channel mix that will deliver the highest added value to the customer is the channel and the company that probably will have the most success. And I don't believe in the one fits all. I think we all will have different strategies. Every company has to define the strategy that is good for their future and their customers. But I believe it's that omni-channel management, and again, I think there are channels that we do not know today, and they will develop in the next couple of years. Whoever is connecting that best with their customers will have a great future.
Louis, what is the situation at Chopard? What's your retail mix like?
I will not reveal the numbers neither, but obviously it has been growing a lot. The sales, the e-commerce sales have been growing a lot during the pandemic. The chance that we have at Chopard is that we are a family maison. So as all family maison, the family has a very long-term vision. The maison is meant to be transmitted to the next generation. And therefore, we benefited from the pandemic to invest a lot in retail as well. This year, we are opening not just the New York flagship boutique, but 4 other flagship boutiques around the world. And we believe that the maison experience is as well a brick and mortar experience. And of course, we need to deliver a more seamless purchasing experience through e-commerce, because some customers are buying only through e-commerce, and we need to answer that demand. But for the ones who need more, who wants to feel and touch the products, who wants to have an interaction with not just a salesperson, but someone who is going to provide an advice to help them building their collection, for those clients, the boutique experience is something that will last, and we believe that it is going to expand on some countries. So we believe that the two experiences need to live together, and one will not replace the other.
I think what's been surprising in the last few years is to see that people aren't hesitating any longer about making big ticket purchases online, which was unimaginable maybe even 5 years ago. Can you, I know it's confidential in many cases, but can you give an example of a very surprising big ticket purchase that was made online?
No, there is no specific examples, but the most expensive pieces that we have in our collection, some of them were purchased online. I must say that today clients do purchase expensive pieces more in the timepieces area of our offer than in the jewelry area of our offer. And bijoux are selling extremely well online, but medium-high jewelry, it is not yet the case. So we believe that this is a market which is going to grow. And to come back on the question on the US market, of course the US market is the most digital savvy market of all, and we see that the purchasing habit in terms of average price in jewelry is significantly higher in the US compared to other markets. So there is a strong advance in the US. But the future is that there will be no limits between the brick and mortar purchase in terms of value and the e-commerce purchase.
And obviously one of the big topics that everybody is talking about this year is the metaverse. There's been a couple of announcements here at the fair of people dipping a toe into that. Patrick, do you see it as a sales channel? Is it a communications channel? What is the metaverse's function for the watch world?
All of the above. And I think we just cannot, I guess, we have to be open to what's happening in the rest of the world and be fast to embrace things. Embracing doesn't mean going full speed if we don't feel it's appropriate. I mean, it's really asking ourselves the question, what is right for now? And very often, I think, and it's at least a philosophy that you listen now, doing something we would be proud of in 10, 20 years or 30 years from now. And I guess when you have a long-term view, that's what you need to do. So, yeah, for sure, we need to have an interest in the metaverse and see what that means for the end consumer, what does it bring, etc. I was actually smiling because I was listening to you. You say maybe 5 years ago there was the belief in the watch industry people would not spend so much money online. 5 years ago was actually, it's probably a bias of the industry, because 5 years ago people were already buying expensive cars, properties, auction, etc. online for amount of money that are far above what people would spend on watches. So I think now the industry is changing a lot, and we have to find that blend of tradition in a way we make our watches, in a way we sell our watches, and the promise to the end consumer. At the end of the day, being a luxury brand means there is a promise we need to keep, and it requires certain level of, it's a mix of conservatism on one end, and on the other end of daringness. And we have to find the balance, including in new channels.
And obviously, LVMH is very present every year at the Viva Technology Conference in Paris. We found out a couple of weeks ago that LVMH already has a metaverse ambassador who will be presenting all the brand novelties there. So even though Bernard Arnault has expressed a little bit of skepticism about it, we do see the company embracing it. So George, what can you tell us about what you think the function of the metaverse will be for TAG?
It's funny, I have to smile a little bit because our CEO, Frédéric Arnault, has taken a lot of questions every press conference who comes on this, and he usually answers them with a little bit of a smile and basically says there is a huge opportunity in here, of course, because metaverse is it's something completely new. That the potential is, we're just seeing a tip of the iceberg. It is going to go. What I think will be really interesting in 20 years when you look back at this time and how the history will judge this technological breakthrough that we're living here every moment. So what I think is important to approach it is what we're trying to do is we don't want to rush into things. We want to really study things and do it really well, really credibly, because I think that's the part you were talking about, that younger consumers, they want to see as credible approaches, and particularly when you go into the metaverse community, that community is very strong, very opinionated. It's at the moment small. Those are those ultra early adopters. If you're talking about the bell-shaped curve of adoption, we are like right here, on the very, very tip. And you need to earn their trust, earn their things to succeed with them. So we're really studying it. We try to come up with a really interesting solution. We have some interesting products in our portfolio that could be really well suited for it. So I think that's it's a potential, but it needs to be taken with caution for sure. There was challenges in metaverse with security, with other things, so it needs to be taken properly. But there is also investment potential, So it's a one side. It's a engagement story. On the one side, it's a commercial story. So one side, it's potentially a product story. So there is a couple different angles you can look at it.
And if I may, it's interesting because when you look back over the last 2 decades. There's been a couple of significant changes in the digital world. I mean, the one before the metaverse was probably the social media, and the one before that was e-commerce. And you think of a brand which was not here, but probably a brand that epitomized long-term vision in luxury like Hermes. I think Hermes launched e-commerce in 2001. They're very early. I think you have to fact check this one, but it's interesting to see a brand with such a strong brand equity and a long-term vision that has been able to embrace some of those changes very early on, 20 years ago.
And it's also interesting, I think, when you look at NFTs, given that a lot of the watch sector now is ruled by scarcity, there are waiting lists for a lot of the iconic watch models. Given that the consumer seems to ascribe a lot of value to NFTs, could the NFT satisfy that frustrated consumer who wasn't able to score a Rolex or, an Audemars Piguet or whatever? I wonder. I don't know if any of you have thoughts on that, or does it not replace the real thing?
Well, NFTs, seen from my point of view, it has to bring an added value to what we are already creating. It's not to replace. It doesn't have to be a second-level purchase. So, we take 2, 3, sometimes 5 years to develop a new watch, and we need to give the exact same attention if we were to develop something in the metaverse or if we were to create an NFT. It doesn't mean that it takes that much time, but it means that it needs to take that much attention, and we need to be, and on that point I totally agree with you, need to be totally convinced that in 10 years from now, we will be proud of what has been launched, and that it will bring an added value not just to us, but of course to our clients. And it's the reason why, for Chopard, we are being very cautious at the moment. We are seeing many things happening. We have even seen fake Chopard creations on the metaverse, which is bringing new major legal issues, of course. There is one thing that we are sure, is that on one side it's the future, and on another side that it brings attention to our maison to a totally new kind of clients. And some cryptocurrency amateurs made new fortunes in a very fast time, are now very much interested not just in the tech investments, but in the luxury and fashion investments. And when you have new clients coming to you, discovering your maison, you need to find the right way to speak a language that they do understand. And somehow this is maybe the challenge for all of us, is that we have new clients coming in, and we need to find the right way to adapt our creations to their demand and desire, and making sure that we are true to ourselves.
Well, time has flown, but we do have a few minutes for questions from the audience. I believe that we have a couple of ushers with microphones. If any of you would like to ask our panelists any questions, please raise your hand. No? No questions?
Hi. This is for all of you. We've been seeing a lot of interesting women's watches. It seems to be like an exploding category. Of course, there's always been women's watches, but I do see a lot of fine jewelry involvement with diamonds and sapphires. Is this a growing category for all of you? You.
Okay. Ladies segment is obviously a huge opportunity for us. Tag Heuer historically has been more focused, a little bit more masculine. You know, when you think of our heritage in motorsports, but particularly, etc., it's naturally kind of skewed us into it. And we have really happy to say our head of product is Maria Lafont, who was here, is really bringing a lovely touch into our portfolio, and we're going to be looking at it more and more. You know, the Solograph watch that we have introduced here is actually a beautiful unisex watch that has been hugely popular over the last 3 days with all the ladies that came our booth, and I encourage you to come and check it out. But I can say certainly that you will see a lot more great stuff for the ladies.
Already.
Okay, great. Thank you.
One thing which is great is that it enables us to put together the best of two worlds in one product. The best of the fine jewelry creation and the best of the fine watchmaking creations. And the more we can encapsulate know-hows and the craftsmanship, the better it is. So it's an opportunity of creativity, but as well, of course, it's an opportunity for the collectors.
Wilhelm, I think that you don't do any ladies' watches. Is that correct?
I would strongly disagree with this for a very simple reason. We don't target gender or tall men or small men or Italians or Americans or Chinese or Japanese. We target watch collectors, and some of them turn to be male and others turn to be female. And if they like what we produce, trust me, they're going to buy it and they will collect it. I find that whole discussion about men and women watches quite strange, at least, you know, from our perspective. I think you build what is in line with your DNA, you expose it, and then some people will reflect on it and others won't. You cannot build something that is working for everybody, not for gender. And again, I think that the most difficult thing is to build a very complicated watch, because usually they're rather big. And then the size will determine who eventually can wear it. So you can wear a big, complicated watch very easily. I, with my ladies' wrists, will struggle with it. And that, I think, is a determining factor a lot more, at least for us, than creating a women watch by taking a male watch and put a few diamonds on it.
Well, thank you all. It's been a fascinating discussion. I feel like we've touched on many different topics. I'm taking away from it that this is a fast-moving, fast-evolving landscape and industry, and that you're all coming at it with a maximum level of passion and creativity. Thank you for sharing some of that with us here today.
Thank you, Joël.
Thank you, Joël. Thank you.
Thank you.
For being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you so much.